Hi, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. We're really excited to spend a little bit of time today talking about STEM in middle school. I know that middle schoolers kind of have a special place in my heart. Before I joined the STEM Connection team, I spent 12 years in the classroom teaching middle school math and science. So that was always kind of my favorite age level to work with. I still like working with those middle school kids. And like many of you have said in the chat, just middle school kids can be really funny and their senses of humor are great. You know, their brains are starting to work in some different ways, and just the observations that they make and the connections that they're making to the world around them. I always very much enjoy talking with middle schoolers and kind of learning more about their thoughts and their perspectives of the world. So I currently am the director of programs for the STEM Connection, and I am joined today by Katie Barrett, who is the middle school teacher, middle school science teacher at St. Mark's School in Indianapolis. So we'll talk a little bit, we'll get kind of introduced and set up, and then Katie's going to share a little bit more about her experiences as well. So thank you for sharing your thoughts in the chat. At any point along the way, if you have a question or a comment or a thought to share, feel free to utilize that chat or the question and answer tool. Krista will be kind of helping to monitor that. So as things kind of come in, she will make sure we see those and have an opportunity to address any questions. And hopefully we can learn and grow and share together today. I breezed right past the poll. So just as we're kind of getting started, Krista's going to pop up a poll for us just so we can understand a little bit more about the audience that's with us live today for the webinar. The questions will simply just, they're quick and easy questions, just asking what your current role is. Do you work with middle schoolers currently, or is that something that you're hoping to do, or just want to get a little bit more knowledge about? And then if this is your first time participating with a STEM Connection program or not. So just so we kind of have a gauge of who's here and what your kind of experiences are like, or what your knowledge of the STEM Connection is, so we can know that and move forward kind of appropriately. We have, I see a couple, lots of current middle school teachers or people that have spent time in middle school classrooms I see with us today. Not sure what else. So Krista, as soon as you see kind of some of those results coming in, just kind of let me know who's here with us today.
We actually have just under half are actually elementary school educators. And then a handful of middle school staff and some support staff, a couple of youth workers, and a caregiver parent. We also, it looks like we have about 3/4 of us have been with our webinars before, or have participated in a STEM Connection program before.
Great.
So,
thank you so much. So that's great to know. Elementary school teachers, I know it's always kind of interesting to think about what's coming next and kind of what supports you can provide that are going to kind of help those students be successful at that next level. So we love having some teachers from different areas, and then youth workers and caregivers too, because a lot of you are working with middle schoolers, maybe not in a formal classroom setting, but maybe what sorts of information can we share with you, or strategies or models could you potentially use as you're just working with middle schoolers in lots of different capacities. So just very quickly, the STEM Connection, we do have a couple of you that maybe are less familiar with our program. So I'm just going to show this quick couple-minute video so you can get a better understanding of who we are. Oh, and that didn't work. So let me try one more time. There we go.
The STEM Connection is really a place where kids can just come to learn and explore and make connections with the world around them. In our farm space here, we have day camps, and we also have field trips. And those run year round and can be flexible depending on what time of year we're in.
This place was the first place I really got to explore nature, like My backyard when I was growing up, it didn't really have many woods behind it. So I got to come out here and explore all these woods and these big open fields and just see what nature was really about and all the fish and birds and things like that.
Kids are free to be in nature and see what they see and ask questions and learn along the way. And it's just a really great informal learning opportunity for kids to come and be themselves and gain skills and experiences that will help them be successful now and hopefully into the future.
All of the activities that we have here are very hands-on, and it gets their minds working and thinking and seeing how things are actually done versus just reading about it. So I really love that aspect, Matt. Everything is hands-on, everything the kids are involved in.
I've had a blast at the STEM Connection. I've made a bunch of memories.
This place has been a blessing for me. And if you want to check us out, you can check us out on our website. You're always welcome. And we'd love for you to come on down.
You guys should check us out online. There's always a space for you. So.
All right, so that's just a little bit more about us. And I know that that video focuses a little bit more on our on-site programming, but we do have other programs as well. So the engagement and empowerment programs that happen other places like what we're doing today, but then also just kind of noting that we have our STEM Future Leaders program, which is our program that specifically focuses on middle school and high school students and providing them opportunities to kind of continue their STEM journeys and gathering more information about potential STEM careers and all of those sorts of things. So a lot of the things that we're talking about today are things that we have done with our STEM Future Leaders over the last period of time. So a lot of the things could be done in a very formal way, kind of in a formal classroom, or in that kind of more informal learning type of environment. And there's just a few more pictures of some just programs that we've had in action over the last couple of months as it's kind of the seasons have changed here a little bit. We've had a chance to kind of engage in lots of different ways out at the farm. Just a couple minutes to kind of give you a little background of how we approach STEM and our programming, and then we'll jump into more of the middle school specific information. So we have, as a staff, kind of defined the disciplines of STEM and kind of the way we approach STEM. When we think about science, that's when we are thinking about the natural world and what's there, how it got there, how it changes, how things interact, all that great stuff. When we're thinking about kind of technology and utilizing some technology skills, we're just thinking about any tool or machine that was invented by humans to meet a want or need or to help us solve a problem. So that could be something very simple, or it could be something very complex and kind of everywhere in between. Engineering is when we're thinking about using kind of a sequence of steps to help us solve a problem. So what's that thought process going through identifying the problem, thinking about possible solutions, planning something, testing it out, and kind of going through all of those steps to help us solve a problem. And then mathematics, we approach as a language of shapes and quantities and values that help us communicate more effectively, where we can be more descriptive when we can use some of those shapes and quantities to help us explain something. So that's kind of our approach to STEM. We also tend to focus on STEM practices, which here in Indiana, we find a lot of these sorts of verbs in our science and engineering and mathematics process standards. And those are the same kindergarten through 8th grade. So we know as we're providing the opportunities for students to develop these sorts of skills that we're reaching them and kind of also tackling standards. We love content standards, but we also have some of those more process-based standards that we think about, as well as the Indiana employability skills standards that we have here. So some of those, what may in the past have been referred to as some of those softer skills, or just kind of some of those interpersonal skills, intrapersonal skills to help students be ready to join the workforce eventually. And that's really critical in the middle school area. And then finally, we also use the Pear Institute's dimensions of success to help us think about our program. These are the factors that have been identified as factors that help contribute to a quality STEM program. So we make sure that we're spending time and being purposeful about making sure that we're doing all of these sorts of things within our program. So thinking about the program or the class in a bigger picture sense, this is the thing, these are the things that we want to think about for that entire program to make sure that we're really providing those meaningful opportunities for kids. And I know Katie will talk a little bit more about this tool as well. So now let's jump into the middle school stuff specifically. So really, we want to think about, why is it that STEM is so critical or important to be doing with our middle school students? And what we know from the research is there are a number of things that are really important and that students can really benefit from when they have these meaningful or quality STEM experiences. So we're going to kind of dive into these a little bit more in detail and then have Katie share about some of her experiences and what she's kind of been seeing and doing in her classroom. So the first one is just thinking about how STEM experiences really help students develop some of those higher level thinking skills. So critical thinking, problem solving, innovation, right? We know that so much brain development happens during that adolescent time, particularly that early adolescence, right? Our brains are kind of purging out the things that it no longer really needs, those neuron connections that have happened, and really starting to form new connections in the brain. And a lot of growth is happening in the gray matter of the brain, where it's really thinking about how the brain is changing and how it kind of processes information. And so that's when we're starting, these opportunities really help students be able to kind of manage those changes going on in their brain and give their brains kind of new ways to function and kind of develop those skills as their brains are ready for that. We also know that STEM experiences provide opportunities for positive collaboration. Middle school students, typically speaking, kind of looking at the group, are very social beings. They want to interact with other people. They're very much influenced by those that are around them. And so STEM experiences are a great opportunity to kind of provide those times for students to work with lots of different people, right? They can work with students that they may work with a lot, they might have similarities to, or that they might have differences with, and really kind of focusing on some of those communication skills that happen when we allow kids to work together, and then just kind of managing that and kind of navigating the whole teamwork and collaboration piece. We know that STEM projects, kind of particularly coming to mind for me would be engineering projects that help youth develop some of those executive functioning skills, where they're thinking about, their brains are ready to process those multi-step problems, or they're being able to tackle, planning something out over a longer period of time. So those time management skills, those organizational pieces, making those choices about, what materials are going to work best, all of those sorts of skills can be developed during some of these hands-on science experiences or STEM experiences. So here, a couple examples of things that we've had our STEM future leaders do over time. In the springtime, we were getting ready to prepare our farm space for our summer camps. And we were going to be kind of creating a new learning space. So we had picnic table kits and wagon kits that we had ordered that needed to be put together. And we found that our STEM future leaders really loved these sorts of tasks where they had, multi-step directions to follow, and they were really making a difference because they were putting something together that was going to impact, our place and space. And they were really helpful with that. And then, so that was something very concrete. You know, they had the materials, they had the steps to follow, and they were able to follow those and have that finished product match what we were expecting. The other side, the other picture here, we have an awesome engineering kit called a Rigamajig. So it's all of these wooden pieces and plastic pieces that can go together, and you can just, and kids can build whatever they want. So I think in this example here, we had challenged our STEM future leaders to create something that could help someone in their family that used at least one simple machine. So we kind of gave them some of those criteria or constraints to work within, but they could come up with whatever sort of idea they wanted to, and then kind of work through that engineering process as well, thinking about these are the materials I have, and start to kind of figure out what worked and what didn't, and then having to kind of organize that and work through that kind of multi-step problem. So we know that STEM experiences can be very beneficial to middle school students in that way. We also know that they can teach and reinforce technology skills. If not anything else, over the past year and a half or so, we have come to understand just how valuable our technology can be to help people stay connected, to help with learning. And so these tools, you know, we need to make sure that our middle school students know, you know, how to use them appropriately, and then also help them think about ways that they could potentially kind of maybe create new technology that could be even more helpful to someone else or to themselves as they move throughout life. So, you know, iPads and different opportunities to kind of build some different pieces of technology, or some of the experiences that we have provided our middle school students. And we try not to focus too much on our electronic technology during our experiences at the farm, because we like to be outside in nature, but we know that they can be a great tool to help us take pictures or share information or gather information. Like if we find a plant that we're not sure what it is, we can use, you know, certain apps to help us do some identification. So, you know, great tools for the learning and just finding ways to incorporate those appropriately. And also a great way to kind of bring in some other subject areas, you know, what might kids be able to produce or create, kind of thinking about some of those literacy skills and something like that when we're using technology. And then finally, really another critical piece of making sure we're providing opportunities for STEM in middle school is that realization that middle school students are starting to really at that age decide kind of, you know, what subject areas they kind of gravitate towards, which they like, what they might have aptitude for, and really starting to think about that next step. You know, what might be the extracurriculars I want to get involved in based on my interests, or what classes might I want to take in high school to learn more about something. Or then too, starting to think about what jobs or careers might be of interest to a middle school child. This time is really when that is starting to happen. Their thoughts are kind of shifting more to thinking a little bit more towards the future. And what we know is that there are lots of opportunities for people that have developed STEM skills. We know that STEM related jobs and careers are kind of growing at a faster rate than some other sectors. So we know that there are opportunities for kids if they have, you know, a certain set of skills. And so if we can help them develop those skills, then we know they might have those, have more opportunities as they move forward. So those are kind of some of those critical pieces that we're thinking about, and why it's so important to offer and provide meaningful STEM experiences for middle school students. And with that, I'm going to let Katie share a little bit more about how she brings some of these things together for her students in the middle school classroom at St. Mark.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Angela. Can you hear me okay? Am I doing okay? Okay, perfect. So before we start, I just wanted to kind of give some context as to where I'm coming from in my journey through education. I went to Marian University here in Indianapolis, and then after I graduated in 2015, I was a teacher in the Alliance for Catholic Education, the ACE program out of the University of Notre Dame, and I actually taught in California. So they place you in any Catholic school across the country. And there in my first year, I taught 5th through 8th grade science. And really, it was baptism by fire. You know, I just really had that kind of rough first teacher year. So I came back to Indiana and wasn't quite sure if teaching was for me anymore. So from 2016 and 2017, I called myself just a floater at St. Mark. I was a different instructional aide in different classrooms, took over maternity leave in pre-K for a little bit, and just wanted to make sure education was where I wanted to be, and it was. So then I taught science for 2 years here at St. Mark, and I also worked at the STEM Connection as one of the camp counselors there for their summer programs during the summertime. And then in 2019 to 2020, I really saw the need to just differentiate in my classroom and be more inclusive. So I did the program for inclusive education, again at the University of Notre Dame, and was an interventionist at our school. So I kind of switched from science to special education and did that for a year. But then really, I love science so much I had to come back. So from 2020 until now, this is my second year back in the science classroom. So that's just a little bit about me and my background. And I just wanted to give some context as to where I'll be speaking from. So that's that. And I think one of the things I really wanted to gravitate towards in this session is just the fact that middle schoolers, I kind of put an arrow to that word relevance, they always want to know why. You know, why is this important to me? Why do I need to know this, Miss Barrett? Why does this matter? So I think what I really try to focus on in a lot of my lessons is making that content relevant to my middle school students. And on the next slide, I just put a picture of a coat hanger or like a little coat hook with a coat on it because someone explained it to me once that there has to be a connection between the prior knowledge or the experiences of your students and that content. You know, you have to have a hook to hang the content on. So you have to, whether that's prior knowledge that they already have, or whether that's an experience that you're going to provide to them, you have to make those connections with the students. And some students are going to make those connections on their own, and others you have to kind of guide through that experience. So what I really wanted to just focus on is the fact that what we teach, our content standards, can really give just context and relevance to our STEM activities. And I'm going to give 3 different examples of just ways that I've done this, and they're just 3 different activities, and kind of talk through what unit they came in and how I positioned them in that unit. But again, these are just ways to give the STEM some context and relevance. So on the next slide, we have owl pellets. So this is something my 6th graders do towards the end of their year, and you can tell they're each doing it individually at their desk since we had to space out. But this is something that is really cool to do in the context of an ecosystem unit. So you're learning about predators, prey, food chains, and this is something that some of my 6th graders said, Miss Barrett, I already did this in 3rd or 4th grade. And I said, that's great, but you know, now we can talk about how is the energy transferring from the prey to the predator, and why do we lose, you know, 90% of our energy every time, and only those different trophic levels going up from one to the next in the energy pyramid, and making the food chains of the owl once we dissect that owl pellet. So that is something that I do towards the end of that unit, and just kind of as a culminating activity, and students really get into it. They like to, you know, really get hands-on and look at, oh, how does my owl pellet compare to somebody else's? So that's one fun thing that we've done in that unit. Another one on the next slide is natural selection. So this is a unit that is done in 8th grade. And this is often, students have to talk about inherited versus acquired traits and adaptations. And it's kind of hard for them to grasp at first how adaptations occur. So what we do kind of in the middle of this unit is this bird beak lab. And as you can see, those 2 students have a tray, and it looks like there's just rice left on their tray, but there used to be gummy bears and sweet tarts and different types of candies and food and then one of the students has chopsticks and the other one has a spoon. And I think there might have been one with a fork and some different utensils, but they soon figure out that certain beaks or certain utensils in their case, right, work best with certain foods, right? So the spoon is going to be easier to pick up multiple pieces of rice, and it's going to be easier to pick up certain things with the chopsticks, the ones that are bigger. So they kind of understand like how adaptations occur in an ecosystem. And they have to, collect so many to stay alive. And we talk about, was there any competition involved in that? Or did your beak automatically, did you gravitate towards certain foods? Why? And so we get to talk about that, and it really makes it real for the students. So rather than just learning about adaptations or how natural selection occurs, we can kind of act it out and really do it in our own classroom. So that's been a fun one. And then the last one of my favorites is just the states of matter have so many cool things you can do with them. And one that really has that wow factor is the dry ice. So this is something that we have, again, towards the middle or end of a unit. And you can talk about, sublimation versus deposition, because a lot of times it's hard to think of examples of that. Students can definitely understand, okay, ice melts from ice to liquid water, but what are other examples of these phase changes that skip a state of matter? So that's a fun one that we do, and all 3 of these really are just acting as those hooks to hang the content knowledge on, right? So you want to give the students an experience, because then they can talk about in real time, like, what are the atoms doing in this dry ice, and what are they moving faster or slower? What's their energy? What is a measurement of energy? What's temperature? And all of these different things, and you can kind of have those science conversations as you're having this really fun interactive activity. So that's just 3 things that we've done in my classroom. And I also want to stress that these activities don't happen every day, and maybe not even once a week, but just they happen as kind of culminating activities. And you can kind of say, as you're teaching a unit, we're going to bring in something really special at the end of this unit, or have that experience to look forward to. So I don't want anyone to be, intimidated that every day has to be this super interactive thing, but just that content then supports whatever activity you're going to do. And then my last little bit of information is just, I love to stress to my students that I am always learning, and I am not necessarily the expert in all fields that I teach, but I try to bring in as many experts as I can, and I try to go back to that student voice that we talked about, that relevance and that student voice and those dimensions of success, and have them ask questions. So one example, most recently, our fall units in 6th grade they revolve around the solar system, and one of the activities that we had at the end of a unit right before fall break was to create our version of a lunar rover, right? And this lunar rover, all it was a note card with a little Dixie cup, and then they had to keep 2 marshmallows inside the Dixie cup. So just imagine the Dixie cup is kind of taped to the note card. Now, the students were not allowed to build anything on top to keep the marshmallows on top. They could only build underneath the note card to stabilize it. And so they had to think of ways to kind of withstand the impact and stabilize it. We dropped it from a height of 7 or 8 feet, And the cool thing was we learned about, the Mars rovers and those before we did it. Then we did the STEM project. And then afterwards, I actually have a friend. His name's Chris Polovic, and he is an engineer from the Purdue University. And he works, he works for Belcan now, but his company before that was actually contracted out by NASA to design a lunar rover. So I was talking to him and just telling him about my classroom, what was going on, and he said, Katie, I've done that. I can talk about that. And I was like, wait, that's so cool. So just bringing it, and that was just a happenstance. Like, that was not purposeful at all. I had done that activity each year and just hadn't known them yet. But so we were able to have that experience in our classroom, and then they could ask more relevant real world questions to Chris because they had done it in their own way, right? So they could ask, and I found that their questions had to do with gravity, had to do with inertia, stability, things that were science related content. And there were questions like, why did you want to become an engineer, which are also great questions, but to have a real person answer these questions that besides me, right? Because they're used to me in the classroom. So this was just that much more of a hook and engagement tool. And what I did was have a Google Meet. So you can see that Chris is at home. He works from home. And so we just did a Google Meet. And I actually have 2 classes of 6th graders. So I didn't want him to have to do it twice. So I just had a Google form with all their questions. And then I had my own Google Meet with him, and I recorded it and then posted it to Google Classroom. So after they took their summative test over the solar system unit, I said, okay, they're all going to be finishing at different times, so they'll just watch the video on their own time. And it was so interesting just to see how engaged they were in the video because they were waiting for their question to be answered. So that was really cool. I've also done the same thing with my sister, Annie, because she is a medical student at Marian University in their osteopathic program. And one of the science standards in 7th grade is cancer and what kind of causes cancer as it relates to mitosis. So they have a lot of questions that surround that topic, especially because it's one that relates. We all might know someone with cancer or have personal experience with that. So a lot of their questions I have found I didn't know the answer to, but I knew my sister would as she's studying to be a pediatric oncologist. So we did the same thing with her pre-recorded video, and it was so much fun. So I think just bringing in as many experts as you can and to have relationships from the classroom into the community and just make those connections to show these people were in middle school once, they were in your shoes, and now they're doing great things. Just really makes those connections that much more real for the students. And I found that it really engages them as well. So that's my experience with STEM in middle school. I know it's kind of a brief experience and just a couple of different examples, but feel free to ask any middle school specific questions or anything else as we go through the presentation.
Katie, thank you so much for sharing that. I love this last piece with, forming these relationships and thinking about kind of who or what the parents of the kids that you're working with, what they do and how those different jobs and careers can have those different STEM connections. I know we have some of our STEM quick wins that are interviews with just a variety of different STEM professionals. So we have some recordings of interviews with some different STEM professionals that anyone can access. I also know that with our STEM Future Leaders program, a lot of times with their events, we have a portion called Lunch and Learn, where we invite STEM professionals that we might know to come in and have lunch with the STEM Future Leaders, the middle school and high school students. And we give the kids just kind of a list of questions that can just kind of guide the conversation a little bit. But we like to bring in all sorts of different STEM professionals. So there might be, 2 or 3 or 4 at a particular event, and the kids can kind of go from one table to the other, or the STEM professional can kind of go from one table to the next, and just kind of hear the types of questions that the kids have about what they do, and they can share a little bit about their STEM journeys. And I know just from feedback that's one of the favorite activities and experiences that our STEM future leaders get to have over time. And they want to be able to have opportunities where they get to explore that a little bit more or learn about different careers. So thank you so much for sharing those experiences. And as they keep going with these different models, Katie may jump in. So now I thought we would spend just a little bit of time left thinking about some of the different instructional or learning models that might work well for a classroom, a middle school classroom, or a middle school program, or an out of school time program that might have middle school age participants. So I was just thinking some of the different models that that might work for you. And one would just be kind of thinking about that cross-curricular learning and how, I know in the middle school, kind of in a school format, in middle school and high school, things are very departmentalized in a lot of cases, where, they have kind of one teacher for one subject and it moves along in that way. But any times that you can find ways to bring in multiple subject areas into kind of one project or one activity, or even in a class or experience, it's going to just have more relevance for the students. So starting small, just thinking about ways here. And I think on one of these, either the Schoology or the STEM education guide, I think the STEM education guide just kind of talks about if you want to connect science with math, here's a few different ideas of ways that you can do that. Kind of just starting simple and just kind of incorporating a couple different subject areas, and then maybe adding more along the way and kind of developing out maybe some signature projects or opportunities for the students. And it's just really nice. A lot of times with cross-curricular learning, you'll have a particular theme, and then the different subject areas kind of approach that theme from their content lens, but it's all connected back to that theme. So it's just making more of those connections along the way. So if this is something that you might want to explore a little bit more, there's a couple of resources there that have some activity ideas kind of based on this cross-curricular learning model. Another model that we have used with our STEM future leaders is the 5E inquiry model, where it's kind of starting with a question, something that the kids are interested in knowing a little bit more about. We kind of engage them and then have them kind of explore this topic that they might have a question about, and then come back and show us how they can explain that and elaborate on that, and then evaluate that. So a lot of engineering challenges work really well using this 5E inquiry model, because it kind of is similar to that engineering design process where you're moving through kind of some different stages along the way, or different steps along the way. And it's really kind of helping kids kind of make those connections and think about things a little bit more deeply than maybe what's on the surface. So a couple of resources there as well, National Science Teachers Association, and then Teach Engineering. Another model that might work well for your setting with the middle school youth that you are teaching and serving would be a project-based learning model, where kids are thinking about kind of within their own world, what might be, or their own community or school or classroom. It can be as kind of broad as you want it to be, but kind of thinking about a problem or something that they're struggling with, or that they see as a problem that needs a solution. And then kind of, again, another process here where they're working through some different steps. So generally here, there's some sort of kind of hook activity or engagement activity that's kind of helping them identify some different problems that might exist kind of in the world or the community around them. And then they're kind of working through. This is a great one to connect with language arts and some of those literacy skills, because there is kind of that research component there where they're learning more about a problem. I know with a couple of those interns that you saw in our video earlier, I worked with them while they were in middle school on a project that was called the Imagine Project. And we brought together groups of students, and they were posed, there was a problem, like an environmental problem posed to them. And then they had to think about how they could address that and come up with a solution to that problem in their own school. So the project that our group decided to tackle was food waste. They had observed that in the cafeteria at school, they were noticing a lot of kids just throwing away unopened packages of food. And, knowing that other kids might be hungry and, other kids were wasting food, or that it was just adding to the trash problem, they decided to learn a little bit more about what they could do to cut down on food waste at their school. And so they researched a little bit more about it, and then they had the opportunity. They collected some data where they stood at the different lunch periods and collected data for like how many unopened milk cartons were thrown away, and just certain things where they could kind of collect some information and have some data to back their observation that food was being wasted. And then they went through the proper channels and actually presented to the PTO or the school commission and the principal, and established a food sharing table in their cafeteria. So they identified that problem in their school, and then kind of got the information and worked through, a lot of those STEM practices along the way in the context of this project or this problem that they had identified. So lots of really good STEM PBL activities out there. I know that PBL Works is a great one, and you can kind of search that one by grade level and theme. It's very user friendly. And then Magnify Learning is another awesome resource for some of these PBL types of experiences. And another one, and I think this is a really great one in the out of school time setting or the more informal learning setting, is thinking about kind of this place-based learning model where the kids are really engaging with their community and thinking about something that they could do to make a difference. And I know a lot of middle school students feel that way, where they want to leave a mark or have an impact or help younger kids and that sort of thing. So it's a lot of inquiry skills and kind of this collaboration. This was one that we did a couple of these with our STEM Future Leaders summer camp last summer, where we had our two groups of students, and we kind of posed to them, we are gearing up for the rest of our summer camps, our other weeks of summer camp. And we want you to think about something that you could do as a group that will help improve the experience that our younger campers are going to have this summer. And they, looked around, they get the place in the space where we were at our farm. And one group noticed that in our exploration station area, which is kind of a free play, nature-based area where kids can just kind of do some nature-based free play, they noticed that there wasn't really a good place, like a good table or workspace for kids if they were going to do maybe something art connected or something like that. So they decided to repurpose an older table that they were able to acquire and kind of made it all ready. And then it was utilized all summer in the space, probably almost daily, utilized in our exploration station area by younger kids. So they were able to enhance that area, the experience of those younger kids. The other group, I think there was a picture of it earlier on, they remember from being campers that in the summertime, it can get pretty hot out at the farm. And, we're always looking for ways to get some relief and keep kids comfortable and safe when it gets pretty hot. So they decided to design and construct a water feature where you could attach a hose, and they could set it up in one of the field spaces where the hose would reach, and it would be like a sprinkler, and it had some different options of different attachments that could be kind of a sprinkler system to cool off the campers on some of those hot summer days. So, and it was great. And it became its own little engineering project, because when the younger groups of campers would come up, they would just have all the pieces and they would have to figure out how to put it together before they got to use it. So it was a great project for those middle school students, and then also kind of extended down to those younger kids as well. So some of these place-based learning experiences can be really impactful for that middle school audience. And there's a couple of resources there again that have some activity examples or project examples that might be translated to your own place and space. And then the last one here is the geo inquiry process. And this one is a little bit more involved. This was a training that I was able to participate in through National Geographic. So it might be something that would be interesting to you as well, with thinking about working with your middle school students. But it's helping students kind of get that wider perspective of the world. So kind of thinking about themselves and kind of in their own place and space, but then like moving that out, from their school to their community, to their city, to their state, kind of starting small and thinking out geographically, how they can make a difference. And it's very similar there to some of those other, process-based learning models where they're asking questions or identifying a problem or an area that they think they can make an impact, and then kind of going through those similar steps of collecting some data, making some visual representations of things, creating some solutions, and then actually taking that step and acting on it. This is a great one. I mean, thinking National Geographic, this is a great one to kind of do a lot of those cross curriculars between science, math, and social studies. There's a lot of natural connections that are happening as you're thinking about, they're creating maps and they're collecting data and graphing things. So kind of an extension of that cross-curricular learning model with a little bit more intention. So if you're kind of ready for that, this is a great program to kind of help you through some of those cross-curricular types of units. And then finally, one of the things that we really love doing, and one of the models that we utilize quite a bit at the STEM Connection, and I utilized in my classroom as well, is just using kind of the power of literature to help make connections. And that could be anywhere from using picture books with middle school students, all the way to kind of finding some of those different chapter books that can connect, and finding ways to connect those literacy pieces. Because, we know that in earlier elementary, we're focused a little bit more on those really fundamental skills in the math and the literacy that are going to help carry through. But, in middle school, they're still developing those skills as well. And any ways that we can continue to make those connections can be really impactful. And I know, just from experience, that really one of the genres that we have really enjoyed exploring more here recently, because it's really started to get a lot more popularity, are some of the STEM kind of biographies or autobiographies, where there are picture books or shorter chapter books about famous STEM professionals and STEM experts in different fields. And it's, I think kids, when they can see these people as youth and kind of understand what they were like as kids and make some connections with that, it really kind of triggers some interest and excitement and engagement for kids in some different areas. So we always think about using literature, a lot of times using fiction as kind of a hook, and then using that nonfiction for content. And it's a great way too, if you're not always, 100% confident in the content because there's a lot to know and you can't know everything, using some pieces of literature to help with that. It's always just a great tool that we have found as we've worked through different programs as well. And then here we have I just wanted to make sure that we shared with you the different resources that we use to compile the information that we shared with you today. So if there's one of those pieces of information about, why STEM is so important, or one of those instructional or learning models that you have kind of connected with and you want to learn a little bit more about that or go a little bit deeper, these are some of the resources that we've used to help put together the information that we've shared with you today. And there's a lot of them, but we will follow up and share with you the slides so then you can go back and kind of access these. So that's kind of the article or the site, and then kind of who published that particular resource. And that is pretty much what we have to share with you today. So right now, we just wanted to give a little bit of time to kind of process through or see if anybody has any questions as you're starting to kind of think about and process some of the information that was shared today in terms of, how you might go about doing some and providing some quality STEM experiences for the middle schoolers in your life or some of those different instructional models. So if you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer those. And just as kind of a reflection as we're kind of processing and bringing all this information together and finishing up, this is a fun way that that you might even want to do some reflecting with your middle schoolers, or just thinking about, what might you start doing in light of some of the new information you've received? What might you stop doing in light of some information? Or what do you think you would really like to continue to do as you're kind of going to take this to the next step? The information that you're taking with you today, and as you move kind of forward into the next period of time, is there something that's jumping out that you want to maybe start to incorporate, or something you might want to try? Is there something that you might want to stop or reevaluate and kind of think a little bit more about? Or is there something that, you're just kind of affirmed in what you're doing with the middle schoolers that you have? And then if you have any of those kind of final thoughts, make sure you just, you can drop a thought, a kind of what stuck thought into the chat box as we're finishing up. So we'd love to hear your thoughts and kind of what's kind of sticking with you today as you're taking a moment to kind of reflect and process some of that information. And again, if you would like to receive the PD certificate to go along with this webinar and this session that we've had today, make sure that you fill out that feedback survey. If you're joining us live, it will pop up at the end of our session. But if you are watching the recording, you can go ahead and scan that code and it will take you to that survey that then you will fill in your information so we can make sure we get the PD certificate to you for your participation today. And then just some of the other upcoming events that we have, or ways that you might be able to connect with us moving forward. Some activity ideas can be found. We have a whole library of STEM Quick Win STEM activities. I think we have about 120 different activities, including 10 or 12 different interviews with STEM professionals. So you can find those on the STEM Quick Wins page of our website, if that's something that you're interested in taking a look at. And then we have a few more webinars coming up after the new year to continue our STEM Educator Empowerment webinar series. So we'll have 3 more next semester to kind of continue the series, and then field trips, reverse field trips, and other ways that you can connect with us there. So we thank you so much for joining us today.